Thanks for checking out this video. So artificial intelligence has gotten to a point where people are actually starting to ask questions about it. Like, what is the impact of it really going to be on our society and entertainment and all sorts of things? I know it was a big part of the writer's strike with, all the studios. And one of the things was they needed specific things in their contract about the use restrictions of artificial intelligence, because there are instances where people feel like it may get to a point, I don't think it's there yet, but it may get to a point where it can kind of replace writers, or in ways can replace actors, by, generating voices, which I believe, actually, I recently saw a commercial that used AI generated actor voicing for a creature, and it sounded terrible. Like, voice inflection is awful. It's just like the most ridiculous monotone stuff you've ever heard. So it's not quite there, but obviously this stuff will get better. I also read a Rue Morgue article, which, if you haven't checked out Rue Morgue, wonderful magazine, check it out. Great horror stuff. And they're very topical because they're talking about artificial intelligence already in horror. Specifically, they had an article about this artist who started doing AI generated artwork and found that AI's grasp on certain things just starts to repeat. And there was this one creepy woman that started continually showing up in the AI generated artwork. So it's become kind of this first, urban legend of the internet. It's kind of like a creepypasta type thing waiting to take off, in essence. So anyway, I lay all that groundwork just to say that those things got me thinking about looking into AI a little bit more myself. And there's an app called Genie, Genie, that's pretty fun. It's free, although there is a pay version you can get, but I don't know how much work people actually would do with it, or playing around with it they would do, so I wouldn't pay for it at the moment. But it's done with ChatGPT, which is the main name that people know as far as artificial intelligence goes right now. So you can just ask this artificial intelligence to do things, to write things. So I decided to do that, and I was like, well, let me just try and see what it would do for writing a short horror story. So literally what I typed in was, write a horror story about a man at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. And the reason that I chose that specifically, I've always thought that's a good, vague starting point for a short horror film. So I wanted to see what ChatGPT would do with it. So I want to read you what it threw out and just kind of comment as I go as to what I feel like I see in it. And let's see if we think that there's anything at this point that's really concerning about replacing writers, or the uses that writers can get out of this stuff. So let's get into it. In the eerie stillness of a moonlit night, a weary traveler named David found himself at a desolate gas station in the heart of nowhere. The flickering fluorescent lights cast ominous shadows, and a chilling wind whispered through the barren trees, sending shivers down his spine. So I'm going to stop right there. Immediately you can see I'm impressed with the fact that there's so much detail and description of the character and what's going on around the character and the scenery. Doing a really great job of setting the scene, setting an atmosphere for the story. So that's my first observation. Moving on to the next paragraph. As David stepped out of his car, he noticed an overwhelming silence that seemed to suffocate the air. The unsettling feeling grew as he approached the gas pump, its aged metal creaking in protest. An unsettling thought crossed his mind. He was the only living soul in this desolate place. So here you're already seeing that it's getting inside the mind of a character, which I think is also impressive. It's also ratcheting up tension already in the second paragraph, which is impressive. It continues. Reluctantly, David walked towards the small convenience store, its windows stained with grime and mystery. The rusty bell above the entrance announced his arrival with a spine-tingling screech. Inside, the shelves were sparsely stocked, covered in a thin layer of dust, as if frozen in time. Again, really good detail that's being laid for the scene. You're getting a really good visual of what's going on here. So I would be able to see how this could be great to be used already as a good starter for people who are trying to write books, or people who are trying to write scripts. As we go on, you'll kind of see, and I'll comment on the fact that It doesn't do everything. It can't totally substitute for people at this point, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't at some point, because these things obviously progress over time. So continuing, a sudden shuffling sound echoed from the back of the store, catching David's attention. A disheveled figure emerged from the shadows, his face obscured by a tattered hood. The stranger's eyes gleamed with an unnatural intensity, and his voice quivered as he spoke. Quote, "Welcome, traveler. What brings you to this forsaken place?" Now, one of the things I'll point out about this is that the matching up of that type of dialogue with the setting doesn't work that well. So this is where a human brain, in my opinion, would work a lot better here. So again, I see a use for using this as an aid for writing, and then you can go through and kind of edit things, which may be something that film industry and, you know, people writing books might be interested in doing, is kind of getting like a rough, one thing that's been talked about is like getting ChatGPT or whatever, or AI, to do a rough draft, and then they have someone go through it and rewrite stuff and edit stuff. Could be a big tide saver. They could pump out a lot more stuff. They could get some more premises. But I just noticed that welcome, traveler, what brings you to this forsaken place? There's nothing laying down the fact that that people would talk that way. It's a gas station, so it's kind of weird. And this is where you need the human brain to say that doesn't really compute. Unease hung in the air as David mustered a nervous smile and replied, quote, "Just passing through, need some gas." That sounded better. The stranger's gaze seemed to pierce through his soul, unsettling him further. Ignoring the growing sense of dread, David handed over his credit card, desperately hoping to complete the transaction and leave. Good. But as the stranger processed the payment, the lights flickered, plunging the store into darkness. Panic seized David's heart as he heard the stranger's voice grow distorted, twisted with an otherworldly echo. "You can't leave now, not until you pay the price," the figure hissed. I actually think that bit of dialogue is a nice twist. This is a really good turn in the story. Again, I am impressed with what the AI is able to do here. With a surge of fear, David fumbled for his phone, its pale glow providing a sliver of light in the darkness. He noticed a diary lying on the counter, its pages filled with cryptic symbols and ominous drawings. The words, "Beware the gas station guardian," were scrawled across the top, sending a chill down his spine. Now, I'm going to point out here that this is kind of a weird meshing of some stuff that we've already known about. What does it say? A diary with cryptic symbols and ominous drawings seems like a very kind of like Evil Dead Necronomicon type thing. And it does feel like it's kind of out of nowhere and doesn't really fit with this whole story that started and the setting of it. Like, why would this thing just be sitting on the counter of the gas station? So again, this is where it'd be better for a human mind to step in and say, we need to put this somewhere else if it's going to be found, not just sitting out in the open on a counter. So, just saying. Continuing, suddenly the lights blazed back to life, revealing a horrifying sight. The stranger had transformed into an abomination, his flesh twisted and contorted, his eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger. David stumbled backward, desperately searching for an escape route. I like that turn. I think that was good stuff. As he reached the entrance, he heard a guttural growl behind him. The creature lunged, its elongated limbs reaching for him. But David managed to slam the door shut just in time. Gasping for breath, he realized he was trapped inside the eerie gas station at the mercy of a vengeful entity. Decent enough writing, but I think it's a little too flowery, a little too formal. So this is where I think, again, a human would be able to kind of loosen it up and make it flow a little bit better. Probably make it a little more casual language-wise for the reader. Haunted by the chilling whispers and the creature's deranged laughter, David frantically searched for answers. In a hidden corner, he discovered a faded photograph of the gas station, revealing its dark history. Legend had it that the station was built upon an ancient burial ground, cursed by vengeful spirits. Okay, I gotta stop there, because this is where it goes off the rails. It seems like ChatGPT was like going along slowly, building things pretty well, and then was just like, oh, I'm only going to give it a few more paragraphs, so now I just need to shove in a bunch of stuff without enough description. That's kind of jumping the shark at this point. So for this guy to just be like behind this door all of a sudden, and he's just like, oh, and here I found all these secrets about what this place is, and it's not even explained like what it is necessarily. It's just like, oh, this is on an old burial ground, which again, that's an old trope that's been used in horror so many times. So again, this is where the human would have to step in and be like, this is too much, this is too overused. So yeah, there's 2 more paragraphs at this point. Days turned into endless nights as David fought to survive, barricading himself from the horrors lurking outside. Every creak, every shadow fueled his terror, and he knew that escape was unlikely. The gas station had become his prison, his nightmare. I like that portion. That's pretty solid. And then the final paragraph, and so David remains trapped, a tortured soul ensnared in the clutches of supernatural forces. The gas station in the middle of nowhere stands as a grim reminder of the horrors that await those who dare to venture into the unknown, a cautionary tale etched into the annals of darkness. So again, I think it's getting a little too formal. I think it's getting a little too overused from what it's taking from at the very end. But a decent concept here. It's just the execution. It's just not there yet. Because again, it has a good setup and then it just like forces things and is just kind of like, and now we're just fast forwarding to the end and we're just going to skip a bunch of stuff. So obviously it's not quite there. Although where it is at the moment, like I said, this is a good tool. And I could see where a lot of people would use this to kind of spit out some ideas or spit out a rough draft and just kind of work from there. So concerning in a bit in a bit of a way, because this could kind of trick people. I mean, if someone's going to use something like this to do writing, whether that be a script or a book, are they going to say that? Are they just going to take credit for it? And is it a case where if someone creates, we'll just say like a book based off of some stuff they ran through ChatGPT, would they then be actually taking credit for it? Like, would they say this was generated using ChatGPT? Would people even know that that was the case necessarily if they decided not to disclose something like that? And would you consider that they had written that book? I don't know, because a lot of people would say that what artificial intelligence does is it sources a bunch of stuff that's fed into it, which is other people's work, and then what it spits out is sourced from other people's work. So if you're using it, you are using other people's work in a way. So these are a lot of questions. This is a very interesting topic to me, but I kind of just wanted to throw that story out there. So I thought it was interesting, especially from a horror perspective. So this is where I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on it, the story, artificial intelligence in general, its role in horror, and the horrors of artificial intelligence and where it could go. Go ahead and put it down in the comments, and I don't know, maybe I'll talk about this at some other point if there are other developments or something interesting happens. But anyway, hopefully people enjoyed this. I know this is something pretty different from what I normally talk about, but do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel. That would be greatly appreciated. Put a thumbs up on this if you enjoyed it. You can hit the notification bell button because then you'll know how many videos I'm putting up and when. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. But until next time, keep it brutal.